Training camp is here and preseason football is just days away. I mean, depending on when this drops, preseason football may have even started. So let's take a look at 5 moves to make at the start of preseason. To kick us off, move number 1, you need to evaluate your entire league, your team included. That means you need to understand, are you a contender, right? Are you at the top of your league? If yes, where do you actually sit among those contending teams? Because not all contenders are built the same. Not all leagues are built the same, right? We often see these super top heavy dynasty leagues. And if you're not one of those top 2 or 3 teams, you might not be a real contender. So once you understand where you are in that power structure at the top, if you're playing as a contender, understanding what the next 2 to 3 years look like just beyond 2024 is going to be key. And if you end up being in the middle of your league, there's different routes you can go there as well, right? Are you coming out of a contending window, right? Are you leaving a series of seasons where you were in contention and just one of the best teams? Or are you just starting to finally end a rebuild? Or are you kind of in that middle to lower tier section? All of this is going to feed our second move. So move number 2 is identify your trade targets and the teams that are on the opposite timeline from you. This is going to be key in establishing what's actually realistic, what players are actually going to be available to help you accomplish your goal for 2024. If you're a contender, the pieces and the teams you can probably trade with are going to be vastly different than if you're a rebuilder or if you're stuck in the middle, right? If you're contending, you need to identify, are you an immediate piece away, right? Like, do you need the piece at the start of the season, or is it going to make sense to identify what running backs you might want and see if they're healthy come week 7 or 8 when you're starting to, get close and start thinking about playoffs. If you're in the middle, same thing goes. You probably have a little bit more flexibility, but understand the trajectory. Are you moving up to the contenders? Are you moving down to the rebuilders? That's going to shift what you're looking to do for the rest, the next 12 months at least. And then as a rebuilder, obviously, are you deep in a rebuild? Are you going after picks, or are you finally starting to emerge and trading those rookie picks away for proven talent? Maybe that's the way you want to go. So you have different paths here, and understanding where you sit in your league's power structure is going to ultimately feed the people and the players you try to target in your trades. Now, move number 3 is really regardless of where you sit in your league's hierarchy. Move number 3 is churn the bottom of your rosters. Take a look at those guys that are sitting at the end of your bench. Do they actually matter? Do they actually help you move towards your goal for that season, right? Do they help you tank? Do they help you win a title? Or do they help you just kind of, potentially build mid-season value? If they don't do those things, it is okay to either trade them or cut them and add these young players that are sitting out on waivers that at least have a path, or at least maybe offer a little bit more upside because they're more unknown than some of these boring, unproductive vets. Like the guys at bottoms of rosters that I think can absolutely be cut. Like a guy like Sky Moore, right? Still rostered 55% of leagues. Why? They've overhauled the receiver group. Sky Moore is clearly not a part of the long-term plans. He's not fantasy relevant, even when they had bad wide receivers. You can drop him. Or, Michael Thomas is still rostered in 62% of leagues. He's a 31-year-old free agent that really hasn't been relevant. Why are you holding on to Michael Thomas? Kareem Hunt, he's unfortunately at the end of his career, 45% of leagues still rostered. Don't know why. John Mechie, another name, 57% rostered. And it's like, yes, great story. I like John Mechie out of college. I thought he was interesting. But that room is loaded. John Mechie's not going to be fantasy relevant and probably will need multiple injuries to even get there. And if he does get there, great. You can probably add him off of waivers because that's where he should be. And if you're thinking, well, if I'm going to cut players like that, who do I go and add? The short list is like Rasheen Ali, Jarrett Patterson, Deneric Prince, Trey Sermon, Isaiah Davis. Basically, I'm just naming handcuff running backs. Those are the guys that are probably going to find value that are on your waiver wire right now. That's what really matters, is finding rookies and camp hype and just use those to fill out the bottom of your roster, because unknown and young is better than known, old, and unproductive. So that's what we're chasing when we churn the bottom of our rosters. And in that same vein, start understanding who is going to land on your taxi squad. If you're not familiar and you're new to Dynasty, the taxi squad is typically a collection of 2 to 4 players that you can store at the very end of your bench if you use Sleeper. It's literally called the Taxi Squad. Usually they're first or second year players. And the reason you put them on the Taxi Squad is you do not anticipate having to put them in your lineup this season. Basically, it's a free pass. It's a locked roster spot once the season starts. So understanding who needs to go there is going to be helpful. If you're a contending team, you should not be putting running backs on your Taxi Squad. The reason being, running backs you're holding because you expect them to maybe, get a start because their starter goes down, or maybe win a job or something like that along those lines. You expect them to have intermediate value for this season. Typically, on my contending teams, I am putting rookie quarterbacks, if they aren't like Caleb Williams, like the big names, or I'm putting rookie wide receivers and tight ends. That is who I'm putting there because I don't anticipate them really being superstars and needing them week in and week out. If one of them does end up being great, fantastic. You move them and you cut whoever's at the bottom of your roster and you just lose that Taxi Squad spot, right? If it really ends up being a difference maker. If I'm rebuilding, my strategy is actually a little bit different, and it really is tied to how does your team or how does your league make draft order decisions. If you guys are using points for, it's technically tanking, but like if I have Caleb Williams and my team is going to be terrible and I want to make sure I have the lowest points for possible, I'm going to put Caleb Williams on my Taxi Squad. I'm going to put Marvin Harrison Jr. or any of these other big names that are out there because I don't want them to affect what my ultimate goal is going to be, right? If I am not trying to win games, why would I keep players that increase my max points for and potentially help me luck into wins? That's not what I'm trying to do. If you know you're not winning a title, if your league doesn't say anything against tanking, this is a viable strategy and is better than just leaving roster spots blank or starting worse players over guys that are on your active bench. And to close us out, move number 5, start reading preseason reports, start reading from the beat writers and all the camp reporters that are out there. What you need to not do not listen to Dov Kleeman if you freaking are on Twitter, NFL notifications, those types, block those accounts for the love of God and actually read the articles if one's included, right? If you want to have Dov and those people on your timeline, that's fine. Click and read the article. Do not just take the headline at face value. Accounts like 32 Beat Writers is typically where I go because they're posting useful information and actually giving credit to the people that need it. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your preseason reports and who's actually reporting that news.